Cannabis is more than just a botanical specimen. It's a profound test of human essence, one that, regrettably, many fail. Public perception often portrays marijuana either as a panacea or a source of danger, a path to spiritual enlightenment or a detrimental escape from reality, an object of worship or an embodiment of sin. However, the truth is that none of these definitions capture the plant's true nature. Cannabis doesn't conform to subjective expectations. It merely amplifies what is already present within a person. This is precisely what makes it potentially hazardous. In ancient cultures, cannabis was not used for entertainment or leisure. It served as a portal, a tool for deep transformation, accessible only to those prepared to confront themselves without pretense or illusion. Shamans, mystics, and spiritual seekers utilized it for the dissolution of the ego, not its glorification. Today, this plant is ubiquitous. It's sold like ordinary candy, smoked as a fashion accessory, and elevated to cult status as an indispensable part of a lifestyle. What was once a sacred ritual has become a mundane habit, and a mystery has been reduced to a spectacle. The question isn't whether marijuana is harmful or beneficial, but rather what effect it has on the human soul. Long before cannabis was used for smoking or as a commercial product, it was a key handled with the utmost caution and reverence. Only those who understood the door it opened could use it. In the dawn of human civilization, it was never considered a means of amusement. It was a sacred instrument, a substance in harmony with spiritual rhythms, and its application was restricted to rituals, fasting, prayers, and solitude. In ancient India, cannabis was offered to Shiva, the formidable god of destruction and transformation, symbolizing the power to dispel the veil of illusion and open the path to true knowledge. Sadhus, his devoted followers, smoked not for fleeting pleasure, but to achieve a unique form of death, the dying of the ego. The chillum in their hands was not merely an everyday object, but a sacred ritualistic tool. In Taoist alchemy, cannabis became a component of complex herbal blends designed to harmonize energy flows, achieve inner tranquility, and induce vivid, prophetic dreams. It was used not to dull the senses or escape reality, but to acutely sharpen perception and open subtle facets of consciousness. Ancient treatises describe this plant as a spiritual ally, capable of both enhancing insight and disrupting energetic balance, depending on a person's inner state. For the unprepared practitioner, it was not a gift, but a serious test. Sufi mystics used hashish in their mysterious ceremonies, seeking to dissolve the boundaries of the self into the divine presence. However, even within their circles, the attitude towards this plant was ambivalent. Jalaluddin Rumi, the great Sufi poet and philosopher, warned against intoxication that merely created an illusion of enlightenment without touching the deeper layers of the soul. Cannabis was revered only when it contributed to the destruction of the ego, not its strengthening. It was to be treated like a double-edged sword, with due respect and caution, lest it wound the hand that held it. Within Rastafarianism, cannabis, called ganja, is revered as a conduit of wisdom and a means of healing for all humanity. However, its use is not merely an act of smoking, but a sacred rite accompanied by prayers. Ganja holds a central place in reasoning sessions, where words and clouds of smoke intertwine in the pursuit of truth. This ritual serves not as an escape from reality, but as a spiritual communion, inseparable from liturgy. In these sacred circles, cannabis helps one not to forget the world, but to remember the divine contained within it. But the modern Western world has transformed this mystery into a mundane souvenir. What once required preparation and reverence is now available effortlessly. Marijuana can be bought from vending machines, smoked casually, and one can then sink into a mindless stream of content, enjoying an artificial calm. The plant itself remains the same, but the context of its use has radically changed. Without ritual, cannabis loses its spiritual direction. When ceremony disappears, only sensory experience remains, and without purpose, it turns into mere indulgence. The danger lies not in the plant itself, but in our treating what was once considered sacred as mere entertainment. Cannabis offers no ready-made solutions. It only amplifies what is already within us. If a person is in harmony with themselves, cannabis deepens that state. But if they are lost, the plant merely expands their inner labyrinth. Many do not realize they enter this temple with impure intentions and wonder why they see only shadows. The truth is that the plant, contrary to popular belief, is not a guide to the unknown, but rather acts as a mirror, reflecting one's inner world. In this mirror, fears, unresolved psychic wounds, and unspoken questions tormenting the mind clearly emerge. The plant is indifferent to fleeting moods. It is concerned only with deep intention. This is why, in many ancient traditions, preparation for interacting with the plant was given immense importance, transforming it into a true ritual, including fasting, chanting, solitude, and purification preceding the first inhalation. And this is not about superstition, but a profound understanding that the mind must achieve stability before it can expand. When used with due reverence, cannabis ceases to be merely a narcotic substance, transforming into a kind of door, a portal to other dimensions of consciousness. However, it should be remembered that doors open both ways, admitting not only light, but also shadows. And the most dangerous illusion lies in the presumptuous belief that one can handle both without proper preparation for either. There's a strong reason why many people who use marijuana experience anxiety, paranoia, or a strange feeling of being watched. Most explain this as poor product quality, incorrect dosage, or an unpredictable chemical reaction. But what if the true reason lies not in the marijuana itself? What if the plant is simply performing its original function, peeling back the layers of everyday life, piercing the veil of illusion, and unmasking what lies beneath, in the very depths of the human soul? Carl Jung dubbed this the shadow, the hidden corners of the human psyche, rejected, forgotten, or avoided. It is not the essence of evil, but rather a source of inner discomfort, not malevolence, but accumulated unease. It is unlived grief, suppressed rage, truths with which an individual has not found the strength to reconcile. The cannabis plant does not create these phenomena. It merely brings them to the surface, like an amplifier that doesn't create music, but only makes the existing melody louder. And often, that melody is unresolved psychic pain. This aspect of cannabis's effect is not popular in discussions, as it is not as appealing to the consumer as promises of relaxation, euphoria, or serene rest. However, any serious practitioner of spiritual disciplines will confirm that the path to awakening invariably passes through an inner hell, through a confrontation with one's own demons. This is not a world of vivid visions, but a realm of discomfort, not a kingdom of light, but an arena of confrontation. Cannabis, when used consciously and purposefully, can become a powerful tool on this path, but only on the condition of one's readiness for self-discovery, to see one's true face, shedding all masks and illusions. In the depths of mystical psychology, the moment of truth appears as a sacred revelation, not an annoying setback. It is like an invitation to the unknown, the ominous foreboding that arises after a fleeting indulgence, the increasing paralyzing shyness, and the all-consuming paranoia. These are not signs of a system error, but rather valuable feedback. The system responds sensitively to the changes occurring, signaling a shift in perception. At this moment, there is not a loss of control, but rather the breakdown of established filters. Inner guardians, protecting the boundaries of consciousness, are seized by panic due to a breach in the ego's citadel. However, modern society, unfortunately, is not prepared to provide support and guidance on this difficult journey. There are no wise mentors, experienced shamans, or supportive communities capable of guiding one through this experience. A person remains alone with their experiences, alone in their room, staring at the ceiling with a wildly pounding heart, trying to understand why there is a feeling of dissolving into non-existence. The truth is, this is indeed the case. Such is the nature of the effect of certain plans that possess the ability to dissolve artificial constructs and burn false beliefs. If a person is not ready for this transformational process, it can seem like a true nightmare. But this is not due to the plant's incorrect effect, but due to a confrontation with a reality that can be frightening. Esoteric traditions have long understood this characteristic. In literature dedicated to psychic self-defense, Dion Fortune wrote about how altered states of consciousness make the etheric body more permeable, receptive not only to deep insights, but also to external energetic influences. If a person's inner world is in chaos, cannabis cannot fix this situation. It will only amplify the volume of existing problems, bringing them to the surface. For healing, one must face these problems head-on. But if a person tries to escape this surfacing by dulling or distracting from it, the cycle will repeat again and again, buzz after buzz, until nothing seems sacred anymore, but merely turns into an irritating noise. Despite its natural origin, cannabis is not synonymous with safety. Its action is not selective. It does not determine who is ready for perception and who should remain at rest. Rather, it lifts the veil, opening access to hidden aspects of consciousness. Further actions and the interpretation of what is seen become each individual's personal responsibility. A common misconception is the expectation that this plant should, by itself, bring relief and well-being. This is far from the truth. Its true function is to facilitate a deeper understanding of oneself and the surrounding world. Pain, joy, confusion. All these experiences are valuable signals sent by the inner self, calling for awareness and reflection. However, due to an ingrained fear of discomfort, such moments are often misinterpreted as negative experiences, and one misses the opportunity for introspection and growth. Instead, another story emerges about how cannabis caused anxiety. But it is important to understand that cannabis does not create anxiety. It merely exposes what already exists. It is not the source of discomfort, but merely its catalyst. This is its unique honesty, which, however, is not always pleasant. Truth can be painful and unflattering. The plant acts as a mirror, reflecting a person's inner world, and sometimes the reflection may be unpleasant to behold, but it is precisely what is necessary to see for further development and healing. One of the most insidious traps on the spiritual path is the tendency to mistake ephemeral sensations for immutable truth. And cannabis, due to its unique properties, exposes a person to this dangerous illusion like no other plant. After using cannabis, an individual may experience a sudden feeling of enlightenment. Thoughts seem deeper and more profound. Music takes on new, heretofore unheard nuances, and coincidences are perceived as signs sent by the universe itself. In such moments, one's personal journal fills with revelations that would hardly come to mind in a normal state. All of this seems incredibly important and even mystical. However, a legitimate question arises. Do these experiences truly lead to real changes in one's personality? The effect of intoxication itself can be extremely appealing, as it creates an illusion of transcendence and harmony with the world. But it is important to remember that mimicry is merely resemblance, not genuine integration of experience. Feeling enlightened is not the same as truly becoming a whole person. Cannabis can create the semblance of spiritual clarity without a solid foundation to sustain it. This is the main danger of this plant. It's not so much about the harm it can inflict on the physical body, but its ability to deceive the soul, creating a false sense of spiritual progress. A person begins to believe in their evolution based solely on having experienced deep feelings. But the depth of an experience is measured not by its intensity, but by what the individual takes from it and how they apply the acquired knowledge in their daily life when the substance wears off. Seasoned smokers often share stories of unexpected revelations, profound insights into personal traumas, a sense of unbreakable connection to all existence, and complete immersion in the present. And these are not mere fabrications. However, danger lurks when these insights remain ephemeral, find no practical application, and are not integrated into real life. In esoteric circles, this phenomenon has been termed spiritual inflation, an ego inflation against the backdrop of apparent transformation, unsupported by real actions and efforts. Hermetic and occult traditions have called this false light, experiences that merely imitate enlightenment while remaining mental constructs. In Kabbalistic mysticism, this relates to the Sephirah Hod, representing the splendor of intellect divorced from the groundedness of truth. It is like gold that shines but eventually crumbles to dust. A person thinks they have seen the light, but in reality, they have only seen their reflection in a mirror. It is no surprise that many long-term cannabis users eventually begin to substitute insights for self-identification. They do not integrate the experience gained, but rather display it like a trophy. They speak loftily, act as if they have achieved enlightenment, quote sages and mystics, but their lives remain unchanged. Their habits and behavior patterns do not shift, relationships do not deepen, and suffering does not disappear. They simply acquire the gift of gab. The plant becomes merely a prop in a play called spiritual growth. Osho, a discerning thinker, once remarked, "Psychoactive substances open doors that silence alone should open." He was not belittling their potential, but warning against their deceptive nature. A door forcibly flung open does not remain open for long, and the revelations it offers can distort the perception of reality if the mind is unprepared to receive them. Intoxication can become a pedestal from which one arrogantly gazes upon those who do not share their vision, while clarity is absent and only an intense sensation is present. The problem lies not in the fleeting insight itself, but in how one interprets and uses it. Cannabis undoubtedly, can offer a new perspective. But if this perspective is not embodied in concrete actions, it remains mere fleeting stimulation. If it doesn't change behavior in conflict situations, doesn't help one face their shadow sides, doesn't prompt service to others, doesn't alleviate suffering, then it is merely spiritual entertainment masquerading as enlightenment. This is where the danger lies, not in the plant itself or the smoke, but in the story one tells oneself about the meaning of this experience. Intoxication is not truth, but merely a doorway. But if one remains stuck in this threshold, believing they have reached the goal, they will never enter the room itself. An addiction arises not to the substance, but to the illusion of progress, and breaking free from this illusion is sometimes harder than from any chemical dependence. This is why profound spiritual traditions never worshipped intoxication. They used it as a pointer to something deeper, but never glorified the vision itself. They asked what that vision demanded of a person. True awakening is not what happens under the influence of the plant, but what happens afterward. It manifests in the silence that follows, in the choices one must make, in the humility to acknowledge that a fleeting insight does not mean complete understanding. Cannabis offers only access, not a final arrival. But the world today needs not more access, but more abiding anchors, more people who do not just visit the sacred, but embody it in their lives, who do not just feel the truth, but live it. Cannabis has an effect that goes beyond simple alteration of consciousness. It penetrates the subtle framework of the human being, the unseen substratum where thoughts, feelings, memories, and energetic imprints are stored. This structure, though invisible to the eye, is felt by every person. When cannabis interacts with this field, it acts without request, amplifying everything already present within it. As a result, for some, cannabis opens doors to intuition, heightened sensitivity, and a deep sense of presence. For others, however, it releases inner chaos. This chaos is not a random phenomenon, but rather a side effect of unprocessed energy. One can imagine the subtle body as a musical instrument. When tuned, cannabis can act as a bow, drawing across the strings, eliciting resonance, harmony, and even moments of silence. However, if the instrument is dusty, out of tune, and unbalanced, the plant merely amplifies the cacophony. In this cacophony, there is often confusion between stimulation and true wisdom. One may feel more intensely, but this does not mean they see further or deeper. The inner world simply becomes louder. When the inner space is cluttered, clarity of thought becomes unattainable. Ancient traditions place special emphasis on energetic hygiene, viewing it not as an esoteric concept, but as a necessary spiritual practice, akin to daily showering for physical cleanliness. Tools such as fasting, breath work, vocalizations, cold exposure, prayer practices, and solitude serve as cleansing rituals that help stabilize a person's energetic field. These rituals prepare the individual for safe interaction with plants, like cannabis, preventing immersion in a chaotic, energetic space filled with unresolved issues. In Reiki and other forms of energy healing, cannabis is sometimes characterized as a destabilizer of the energetic field, which is not due to its harmfulness, but its ability to sharply increase sensitivity. This surge in sensitivity can facilitate access to subtle energies, but can also make a person more vulnerable. Practitioners who are insufficiently grounded may experience instability or chaotic sessions after using this plant, as intensified sensations are accompanied by a reduction in control. A similar situation is observed in Kundalini work, where cannabis can awaken dormant energy before the body is ready for its integration. A person may experience a feeling of openness, electric current, and even euphoria, but then a sharp decline follows, accompanied by disorientation and an inability to effectively ground the experience. In the depths of the Amazon, shamans, keepers of ancient knowledge, believe that every plant is not just a gift of nature, but an experience, and cannabis is no exception to this rule. In their view, each plant possesses its unique consciousness, spirit, and frequency. When this spirit enters a person, it communicates, not through words, but through emotions, memories, and energetic sensations. However, if a person's mind, soul, and body are not pure, this communication can become distorted. The plant, like a mirror, reflects inner impurities. Instead of expected clarity, confusion masquerading as revelation arrives. This is why many people experience exhaustion, loss of focus, or emotional vulnerability after intense cannabis use. The reason lies not in the plant itself, but in the person's unpreparedness to interact with it, in the absence of purification, restraint, and reverence. This process can be compared to plugging a fragile musical instrument into a faulty amplifier with frayed wires. Instead of music, only noise results, which over time dulls one's receptivity. Cannabis, like fire, interacts with a person's energetic body. It spreads, consumes, and brings light, but only if the space is clean. Otherwise, it simply burns everything in its path. Without grounding, clarity, and conscious boundaries, what was meant to elevate can lead to fragmentation of the self. A person loses focus, willpower, and sinks into a foggy state that seems peaceful, but actually conceals dull stagnation. The danger lies in mistakenly accepting this fog for tranquility and the dulling of sensations for healing. However, healing is clarity, not stupor. It is the return of power, not its suspension. Cannabis, used without energetic awareness, can temporarily hide an imbalance instead of facilitating its resolution. The question naturally arises, is the inner world pure enough to perceive truth? Is consciousness, this inner sanctuary, prepared to receive such a powerful plant as cannabis? For this plant is not a tool for bringing order to thoughts and feelings. Its function is different. It sheds light on existing reality, and what appears before one's eyes directly depends on the content of one's inner world. In the distant past, cannabis was used only in moments of spiritual readiness. In the modern world, however, its use is often associated with the end of the work week and a desire for relaxation. This shift occurred gradually, unwittingly, under the guise of liberation. What was once considered sacred took on symbolic meaning. What was a conscious action became an impulsive urge. There was a transition from the spiritual smoker to the content consumer. While the plant itself has not lost its power, humanity seems to have lost the ability to interact with it properly. In the Rastafarian tradition, cannabis is not a way to isolate oneself in a room and cope with stress. It is an integral part of sacred rituals, philosophical and spiritual contemplation. The smoke ascends heavenward, along with chants, prayers, and the rhythms of drums. It is a collective ascent, not an individual escape from reality. The goal is not to gain pleasure, but to achieve harmony with Jah, God, the source of all being. And if a person's heart is not pure, cannabis will surely reveal it. This is not entertainment, but a sacred act of consecration in the African diaspora, particularly in Afro-Brazilian religious currents like candomblé and umbanda. Cannabis did not always play a primary role. However, the fundamental idea behind its use was that each plant was perceived as carrying a spiritual frequency, purpose, and vibration. The misuse of a plant was seen as an abuse of its energy, which in turn led to imbalance. Ritual determined the effect, and ceremony created a container. Nothing sacred was used without prior preparation and due respect. There was no casual consumption, only conscious communion. However, the modern world pursued a different approach. Ritual demands time, self-discipline, and humility, which can be unwieldy. Capitalism, by contrast, thrives on convenience and accessibility. Thus the plant was stripped from its cultural context, adapted for mass consumption, and presented as part of a particular lifestyle. Today, cannabis is offered in stylish packaging, promoted by influencers, and marketed with the same strategies as wellness smoothies. Self-proclaimed benefits are touted, while potential negative consequences and the necessity of self-reflection are conveniently omitted. Advertising is dominated by positive imagery, pastel tones, and superficial allusions to mindfulness. The sacred has been commodified, ceremony abolished, and cannabis transformed into a product rather than a portal to the spiritual realm. In the contemporary world, people increasingly indulge in reckless consumption of entertainment, which in essence is a meticulously designed mechanism for programming consciousness. They immerse themselves in an endless stream of information, often while smoking, mechanically scrolling through social media feeds filled with meaningless content whose sole purpose is to stimulate dopamine production. In this relentless pursuit of pleasure, there is no room left for genuine connection, collective creativity, singing, or simply silence. Only a continuous bombardment of stimuli. Amidst this multi-layered chaos, a plant with immense potential is reduced from a vibrant flame to a faint mist, from a source of clarity to a state of stupor. Even festivals claiming spiritual depth, with their incense, ecstatic music, and amulet sales, often relegate the plant's role to mere background noise. Ritual becomes a performance, ceremony a costume show, and the plant's true essence, its ability to transform, dismantle the old, and awaken the new, is buried beneath layers of aesthetics and superficial trappings. Cannabis, however, does not strive to be aesthetic. Its spirit is ancient, wild, and uncompromisingly real. It cares nothing for branding or marketing ploys. Its only concern is human intention. When a clear structure and ritual are absent, its energy disperses, seeping into distractions, anxieties, and unhealed wounds. Without a guiding force, the plant merely amplifies a person's current state. This explains why some people experience inspiration, while others feel stuck. The same plant, but different vessels. By abandoning ritual, people deprive themselves of the structure that made the experience sacred. The result is mere entertainment disguised as healing, an imitation of depth, a hollow echo of what was once holy. The plant itself has not changed, but the attitude toward it has. And until this structure is restored, people will continue to wonder why the experience feels superficial, inconsistent, or even chaotic. It's not that cannabis has lost its power. It's simply that people have stopped preparing themselves to receive it. Ritual was never a performance for the divine. It was a way to prepare an individual, to purify their mind, energy, and heart. Thus, when the plant opens a door, one enters with grace and understanding, not confusion. The sacred is not lost. People have simply ceased to recognize it. The danger of self-deception lies in the conviction that good intentions are sufficient for achieving desired outcomes. A common belief is that if one is positively inclined, cannabis, as an intelligent plant, will guide them on the right path. However, like other spiritual guides, cannabis responds not to superficial emotions, but to inner energy, sincerity, and clarity of thought. Many approach cannabis out of simple curiosity, without a clear understanding of their goals. They seek it as a way to improve mood, deepen thoughts, alleviate boredom, or reduce stress. Often, they forget that the plant does not bring peace by itself, but merely reveals what is already present within their inner world. With a conscious approach, cannabis can become a valuable ally, helping one detach from egoistic thoughts, observe behavioral patterns, and lessen the influence of internal biases. Yet the key factor is not the plant itself, but the state of the person approaching it. Without proper preparation and awareness, the experience of using cannabis can become unpredictable and even negative. A lack of reflection leads to insights quickly fading, while insufficient grounding transforms openness into disorientation. How then can cannabis be used beneficially without falling under its sway? First and foremost, it's crucial to understand that cannabis should not be the initial reaction to emerging problems. If one experiences anxiety, they should not immediately resort to smoking. It's necessary to pause, analyze one's state, and ask oneself questions. If worry overwhelms, there's no need to escape it. It's important to dedicate time to physical activity, deep breathing, or journaling. Only when the body is calm and the mind clear can cannabis become a tool for purification, not destruction. Before consuming cannabis, one should honestly answer these questions. What am I seeking? Clarity or comfort? Truth or temporary relief? Am I drawn to the plant due to inner disharmony or a desire to avoid something? There is a fundamental difference between using cannabis for conscious exploration and using it to dull unpleasant sensations. The former is a spiritual practice, the latter a meaningless repetition of destructive behavior. In ancient spiritual practices, cannabis was never the sole element. It was always harmoniously integrated into a broader spiritual ecosystem. Fasting, immersion in silence, vocal meditations, prayers, breathwork, and cleansing rituals all played a vital role. These traditions were not random or superfluous. Rather, they constituted spiritual hygiene. They helped prepare the consciousness, cleanse it of mental chaos, and attune the nervous system so that the plant could fulfill its deeper purpose. Grounding practices are of immense importance. It is recommended to consume cannabis in silence, while in contact with the earth, disengaging from your phone, and turning off background noise. It's crucial to allow the plant to guide you inward, not outward. Record your thoughts and sensations, reflect on them, and integrate the insights gained into your life. Bring these realizations into your actions, speech, and expressions of love. This is where true alchemy occurs, not in what you see, but in how you utilize what you've seen. Cannabis without integration transforms into a form of spiritual entertainment. One begins to strive for a specific state instead of working on themselves. This becomes part of their identity, and they start to associate their depth with the plant, as if they cannot access wisdom without it. This can lead to a dependency, not chemical, but existential. One forgets that the plant is merely a mirror, reflecting the depth that has always been within them. Cannabis simply helped to unveil it. The true journey begins when one can access that state without external stimulants. The goal is not to remain perpetually intoxicated, but to bring what you found in that state back into your daily life. An insight is not the end goal. The application of that knowledge is transformation. Are you capable of showing kindness without needing euphoric sensations? Can you remain present without chemical support? Can you navigate conflicts, boredom, and routine while maintaining awareness? This is how one can use the plant without losing oneself and without allowing it to become the sole source of meaning. By returning to yourself as the center, you allow the plant to open the door, but only you can walk that path. If you don't, you merely spin in place, experiencing more sensations but gaining no new knowledge. You don't need more intoxication, you need more honesty. Honesty that is not always pleasant, but always real. Honesty that strips away shiny illusions and asks, is this helping me grow, or merely helping me hide? Throughout history, across various cultures and eras, cannabis was rarely used in isolation. Its spiritual application was almost always collective. It wasn't that individuals couldn't achieve altered states of consciousness on their own, but rather that those who understood the plant, knew its power, could become unpredictable without a specific context, and revelations could be distorted without community support. The plant is capable of opening new horizons, but it is precisely the circle of like-minded individuals that provides stability and protection. In the Rastafarian tradition, smoking cannabis is not a casual activity. It is an integral part of reasoning sessions, gatherings where the herb is passed with reverence, accompanied by the reading of sacred texts, discussions, singing, and a conscious striving to comprehend divine truth. The goal is not intoxication, but harmonization with the higher self. Words are spoken thoughtfully, silence is observed with respect, and each participant becomes both student and teacher. The herb moves clockwise around the circle, mirroring the flow of time, energy, and the sacred wheel of life. In this space, cannabis ceases to be the focal point, transforming into a bridge connecting people. Similar principles apply among some indigenous peoples. In Amazonian and Central African cultures, even if cannabis does not play as central a role as ayahuasca or tobacco, the fundamental ideas remain consistent. Perception-altering substances are consumed only in the presence of a group, within a ritual framework, and with a clearly articulated intention. This experience belongs not to an individual, but to the entire community. Songs, prayers, fire, elders, and unseen spirits observing from the sidelines create an atmosphere of support and protection. The journey is not undertaken alone. Even with closed eyes, one feels the support of the circle. It's not only what the plant reveals that matters, but also how others help interpret what was seen upon returning to ordinary consciousness. Contrasting this with today's realities reveals a stark difference. In one hand, an escape mechanism. In the other, a window into the digital world. The necessary connection to reality is absent. There's no preliminary preparation, and no thought given to pathways for returning to ordinary consciousness. Only fleeting pleasure and a sense of isolation. The sacred transforms into yet another episode of self-estrangement. And this is where the uncontrolled descent begins. When an individual confronts a revelation alone, without support or the opportunity to share the experience, the insight does not become part of their holistic worldview, but fragments into isolated pieces, An illusion arises of touching something fundamental, but the absence of witnesses, reflection in the eyes of others, and necessary calibration leads to the formation of a personal, distorted belief system based on fragmented memories and decontextualized insights. Solitude is mistakenly taken for enlightenment. However, within a circle of like-minded individuals, something different occurs. One is listened to, seen, and reminded that their personal revelation is merely a part of a universal truth. The experience gained is significant not only for the individual, but for the entire community. One is entrusted with responsibility for the gift received from the plant, which not only opens new horizons, but also presents specific tasks. The plant, as it were, asks, "What do you intend to do with this vision? Will your life change? Will you serve others? Will you dedicate yourself to healing?" In spiritual practices, egocentrism holds a humble place. It's impossible to feign enlightenment when those around you see your true essence. One cannot claim profound changes without being prepared to account for their words and actions. In a ritual space, there is nowhere to hide from external eyes, and this is precisely the power of collective work. What truly matters is not the sensations the plant evokes, but how that experience is perceived by other participants. A circle of like-minded individuals prevents personal illusions from becoming an unshakable doctrine. In solitude, without challenges or resistance, everything seems true. However, not all feelings reflect reality, and not every thought arising under the influence of an altered state of consciousness is sacred. Some may be projections of personal fears and desires, distortions of perception, or simply mental noise disguised as spirituality. The collective helps separate true signals from interference, verifying one's visions in the light of shared reality. Even in modern cities, one can create a semblance of sacred space. Simply gather a few friends, light candles, turn off phones, and articulate a clear intention. It's important to share moments of silence together before and after the ritual, committing to reflection and mutual support, striving not merely for a fleeting experience, but for genuine transformation. This doesn't require traveling to jungles or visiting temples. The key is reverence, ritual, and a sense of community. Without these elements, cannabis use becomes like incense scattering in the wind, beautiful but aimless. The plant demands structure because it possesses powerful energy, which, like any amplifier, magnifies everything it touches. In a collective setting, it can enhance clarity, healing, and vision, whereas in solitude, without grounding, it can lead to confusion, illusions, and egocentrism. Perhaps the question to ask is not what cannabis is used for, but with whom. For the presence or absence of a sacred space often determines whether the plant becomes a teacher or merely entertainment. In the journey of every seeker, a turning point arrives when the initial excitement of new impressions gradually fades. The uniqueness of experiences erodes, worldviews become monotonous, and insights merely echo already known truths. It is then that a genuine deepening into the essence of things begins, requiring not an amplification of sensations, but extreme sincerity. For the true work lies not in